to U of A for an arborist set of classes to learn how to take care of the trees that are in our environment. It was not a full arborist certification because that's 568 trees and 341 plants, and we only have 12 species of trees and 14 plants. So I wasn't going to take another year to waste my time because I'm not going back east to take care of trees. But I did become very knowledgeable about our trees here. I live here. I live in a big pine area. I live up in High Country Pines, and I have been up there for 30 years. And so I have a vested interest in preserving our pine trees. I live here too, and it's one of the reasons I live here, because I enjoy walking in the woods, and taking my kids and grandkids and foster kids for walks and everything else. So I really have a vested interest in protecting the trees. I have a tree business, sure, I get paid to remove dead trees or dying trees. But I also volunteer for free to go to anybody's lot who calls me and evaluate what's going on with their trees. There's no fee for that. Any of you can call me anytime, and if I'm not 12 hours behind on the day, then I might say I'll come and see you tomorrow afternoon, but I will come and look at the trees. In town, there are realistically only 4 groups of guys that know what they're doing. No offense to the guys who come up here, retire from, some company in the valley, come up here and retire. They're gonna start a business. They're gonna start a yard cleaning and tree business. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, except they're giving advice to homeowners on what they should be doing with their trees that are dying. And they don't have the education. Now, I've worked with the Mogollon Tree Service, Ernie Delgado. I invited him here today. And Hal's here, Hall, who has a tree business here in town. He's knowledgeable also. Wayne Parham with Action Tree Service is very knowledgeable. And all these guys have a lot of years in the business. They're all insured, and they all will take care of your property. They're my competitors, yeah, but I don't have a problem saying that they will do good work. There's so much work right now that if I was to say I was the only guy, my wife would shoot me. I'm already not home hardly at all. And there should be business cards available from Hal. There will be some from myself if you want to talk more about it. Mine has my email address, my phone number, so you can contact me either way. I don't mind. Now to get to the subject at hand, the bark beetles. When we have a drought, we've had an ongoing drought for a number of years, the bark beetle will expand its territory. They are here all the time, but they're an opportunistic bug in that when a tree doesn't have enough moisture, the tree naturally will draw its sap down into its root base to protect itself. So the tops of the tree and the upper branches of the tree have virtually no moisture in them. I think the Forest Service said this year that trees were somewhere between 2 and 5% of a moisture profile. I've been here for 40 years, I've never heard of something like that. I mean, I've heard it, 8, 12, something like that, nothing this low. What that means is that the bark beetle, it's like Thanksgiving to them. The tree, when it's in stress, actually gives off an aroma, which you and I can't smell. The bark beetle can. And when it smells that, it tries to get to that smell. They only bore in on the 4-inch diameter and smaller parts of the tree, generally, 99 out of 100 times, because that's soft bark. So your smaller trees that have soft bark on them, they're gonna bore in those, but they love to get into the big trees. They're airborne, they're so small, they have wings, they're airborne, and when we have our winds, which we all know we have a lot of them, they fly from one tree to the next tree. And then when they start boring in, they give off an aroma, which attracts more beetles. Now when they bore in, when a healthy tree has a lot of sap, and when the beetle bores into the tree will respond by emitting sap, which seals the beetle and stops them in their tracks. So when we have moisture in our trees, we still have beetle, but we don't have a lot of tree. No moisture, they get in the tree. When they get in the tree, they lay their larvae, and they also emit a fungus into the tree. I call it a fungus. What it does is it seals the whole tree from absorbing moisture, and the tree dies. That's why you see your tree die from the top down in 7 days. I don't know what happened. The whole tree just bang. I went home last weekend, I came up this weekend, and I got 3 dead trees. What happened? Well, you had bark beetles in there to begin with. You know, and that's what happened, is they eventually sealed the tree, died. Well, when they have taken the moisture out, it takes about 6 weeks for their larvae to hatch. And then they're blown into the next set of trees. I'll bet, in all seriousness, I have taken out 500 groups of 8 trees. I don't know what it is with 8, but for me, that's the number I seem to find predominantly. If we don't get the first one or the second one, there's gonna be 8. You know, I mean, that's one of those, I hate to say wives' tales, but it really seems to be pretty predominant. That's the way it's happened in the work that I do. If you have a tree that is already fully dead, the beetles aren't in them. They've already moved on, okay? What you have to look for, and the way I tell when I go look at people's properties, is I get the sun behind my back and I look into the tops of their trees. And I compare the tops of their trees to their other trees. And then I can see this one's a little lighter. Well, it's already started the process. Might be a week later before it's gonna die, but it's in the process. So I recommend take that tree down. And my recommendation is take every dead tree you've got, especially any that are bark beetle killed, take them down, get them off your property. Some people say, oh, you can keep anything 6 to 8 inch diameter and use it for firewood. I'm not taking any chances. Any tree I take down goes off the property, or you can have somebody else take it down. I'm not interested in. It's not that I don't want your work, but if you don't want what I consider good advice, then you need to take somebody else's advice. So for me, I see lots, forest trails, high country pines, the air park, section 31, that have 15 to 20 dead trees already. And nobody's doing anything. And I'm not asking them to call me, call somebody. Or buy a chainsaw, get going, because there's a lot in high country pines. I'll tell you a quick story. There's a lot in high country pines that I took care of probably 18 years ago. Woman bought it, had some dead trees on it. I cleaned it all up, and 3 years later, she called me, she says, I got some dying trees. Okay, I went and looked, and yeah, it was bark beetles when we had the last big epidemic. And I told her, I said, I need to take all these trees out. Well, just take those out. Let's leave those and see what happens. Maybe I can save those. You can't save them. Once they're in there, there's no saving them. Get them down, get them off your property. No amount of water, because the tree is sealed. You can't water that tree. It's sealed. Well, she ended up that over the course of that whole summer, I took every tree off her lot. She had no trees left on her lot. She paid for 24 6-foot Austrian black pines to be planted on her property. This spring, she wasn't watering, it was gone. Guess what? All of her Austrian black pines are dead. So it's like, you've got to put, water's the key, the big key. There's no chemical. I don't care who tells you, oh, you can drill in the ground and put this in the ground, it's going to save your tree. Not true, okay? The only thing to do is water them. Water them early, water them not even consistently. They have, the Forest Service brought some watering tips for you. What I recommend to my customers is get one of those broadcast sprayers, like a hoop, and put it between your trees and let it run until you got 3 inches of water. I use a 1 pound coffee can, or for us older folks, a 303 can. To put, when I got 3 inches of water in there, I don't have to water again for at least a month, because that's all that tree's gonna absorb. But keep moving that watering around the other trees in your property. Yeah, you're gonna have a water bill. But if you're like me, I'd rather have a $300 water bill than $1,200 fee to take down 7 trees. So, you know, be proactive. That's the best thing I can say. Be proactive. When the tree's cut down, one way to tell that it's bark beetle is, again, us older folks. Remember what psychedelic looks like, the prints and that kind of stuff? That's what it looks like. Purple, kind of splashed out like this into the wood on the tree. That's how you know, yeah, they were right, that is bark beetle. Now that's the one that's affecting our ponderosa. There's also some that are affecting our pinyon trees. That's a different bark beetle, acts very similar. Treatment is still the same. And there's a new one that I just found out a couple days ago that's going after our alligators and our shaggy barks, and I'm not familiar with that one, so maybe the Forest Service knows.
It's cedar bark beetle.
Cedar bark beetle. Acts pretty much the same as the bark beetle. So, you know, hopefully we don't lose those, because on a lot of lots, when I first started doing this, we used to take out all the shaggy barks. They're a parasite tree. Cut them all down, make the pines grow. But then we had the bark beetles, and then all of a sudden my customers have no trees because they lost all. So now we're more selective. Spacing of trees. You know, if a pine tree's in competition with a shaggy bark, I take out the shaggy bark. Let that pine tree get some more moisture, because shaggy barks, they hog moisture. So I take that out. I don't do anything with alligators. I love them. I hate to trim them, do anything. Beautiful old trees. Some of the oldest trees in the world, I think, for some of the alligators we have here. So I wouldn't do anything with those. But we have to get proactive in dealing with our dead trees, our dead branches, not the ones like on the normal growth of the tree. I'm talking about if you have like a cedar tree that has a limb that comes out, and all of a sudden it's dead, the rest of the tree's good. Get that limb cut off. Okay, get it off your property. Get the stuff off your property. I know a lot of you like to burn firewood, but I personally can't see any reason to keep any of that stuff on your property, and I would never recommend it. Up to the customer, but I'm not gonna do that. That's pretty much what I have to say. Yes.
So I'm just going to ask you for a little bit of clarification on something you just said. At one point, you said once the tree is dead, the bark beetles are gone, and the tree's sealed up. 2 sentences later, you said, when I take down a tree, I always remove it from the property, because you don't want that on your property.
Well,
but didn't you just say the bark beetles are gone?
I'm not going to bet my reputation that every beetle's out of that tree. And I'm not going to bet your trees that they're all out. I mean, there was even a period back about 15 years ago where the recommendation came out, oh, chip them. Chip all those trees. Use the bark, chip them. Well, they were making these chip piles that were 5 or 6 inches deep all over the place. Bark beetle lives in 4 inches of tree. So they were infesting the chip piles. So my policy got to be, you know what? I'm going to cut it down as close to the ground as I can. You know, if they're small, I've got a bobcat. I rip them out of the ground. I rip the roots out and everything and take them out, get rid of them. If they're too big to do that, I mean, we have guys in town that have stump grinders. I'm not afraid of the stump being a habitat for those beetles, but I definitely don't want to take a chance on any log pieces. Yes.
I've got a question. If they're an airborne pest, is there no commercial spray that you can spray on the tree prior to them getting to that tree?
They're back again like 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. There was a group of people that came out with this chemical called Heber-Overgaard, and we had some people here in town that bought these pumps. And they were going around saying, I can protect your trees by spraying them with this Heber-Overgaard. Well, if they're already in the tree, you're not protecting anything.
No, I mean
Okay?
before they even get there.
But the thing is, the pumps, you got an 80-foot tree, you're not going to be able to pump water, or a solution 80 foot up into the tree. That's where they're going. They're going up in the top of the tree. So my position and the position of, I believe, the Forest Service and everybody else is that really isn't effective. I believe the Forest Service actually paid to have 900 trees done at one time. Yes.
We did, and it's $80 to $100 a tree. That was 15 years ago. It's very effective if you cover the entire tree prior to infection.
The entire
And you've
tree.
got to have somebody with a bucket truck, and you need to have a licensed person who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing you would spray your fruit trees with, but it's a costly endeavor, and so, I'll tell you the truth, I'm considering doing it at my house, but on a very limited number of trees.
Well, for the Forest Service, maybe they were offering 80 or 90. For the people, the residential people, it was $300 a tree. And I wasn't gonna be involved. I don't know if they were making a deal with some of the,
If they're in the same location and they have, if you work a deal with them, you have a lot of.
are they coming out of Flagstaff or out of
They
Phoenix?
came out of Payson,
Out of
but
Payson?
I told Gene, I don't know if they're still doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
They also came out of Phoenix, Southwest Pest Control.
Yeah, well, the people in town didn't have a bucket truck. They had a trailer with a little, 100-gallon water tank and a hose that was pressurized. Yes, Al?
One of the things that I've seen with them though too is you can spray that tree. If it already has the beetle in it, you're not gonna be able to get in through the bark to kill that beetle. Only thing by spraying it you're gonna get is having something on the outside of that tree that it doesn't like. So it's gonna move on to something else.
If it's already in there and laid its larvae,
Yeah,
it's too late for the tree. So, yes, sir.
Do you have any idea how long that tree lasts?
1 to 2 years. Carbaryl lasts longer than permethrin, and that's another chemical, but it's not, I don't think it's as effective as carbaryl.
And I believe you have
See,
to be licensed.
just so you know, I'm just going from my experience. The Forest Service biologists, people like that, they have other, information, and they have some they're gonna present today. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that one of the ways you identify a tree that's in trouble is you get the center pack. You compare the color, if it's lighting up on colors, that's a clue to you.
Yes.
I've heard that bark beetles will leave sawdust at the base of a tree. Is that an old wives' tale?
No, it's not. If they've got it real bad, it's one of the later stages, they will do that. You'll see little piles of sawdust all around the bottom, little brown kernels type of thing at the bottom of the tree. But, that's just more confirmation. But there's 8 different beetles that live in trees. So,
Back in '01, there was a guy named Campbell out of U of A.
Steve,
Yeah, who was the expert for the citrate force.
Yeah.
And I attended a seminar, and he reflected the same thing you're saying. You get that tree down, get it off your property.
Steve was my instructor.
Oh, was he?
As a matter of fact, so I know Steve. I just found out today that he has retired, and he's probably climbing a mountain somewhere, one of his favorite things to do. But he used to come to HOAs and everything, trying to help out people.
Yeah.
Yes,
What about deep watering as opposed to the sprinkler you were describing earlier?
That's what you do.
ponderosa trees are a pancake. They don't have roots 3 foot down, 4 foot down. Your average ponderosa doesn't. So deep watering to me is kind of ineffective to them. I don't know. The Forest Service maybe have a different opinion, but and I'm open to any opinions.
Well,
But,
what you gave about the 3 inches, that is deep watering, that's considered deep watering.
yeah.
Basically, you're just trying to get as much water.
If you water your grass for
as
20
you can.
minutes, that doesn't do it.
The trees, another quick thing for you. Ponderosa trees feed at the perimeter of the tree, way out here. At the edge stand at the edge of the branches. That's where they're feeding. They're not feeding. I see people all the time with their hose up against the base of the tree. You're doing nothing but wasting water. They can't absorb any water over there. The feed out here in the little feeders, that's where they get their moisture from. They're also quadrant feeders. They feed from all 4 sides. So get that water all the way around them. Don't just put the water out here. That's why, to me, that broadcast idea, or a lot of people like soaker hoses. They use soaker hoses and stuff, but I don't think you get enough water in the right place with the soaker hoses. Yes,
On
sir.
Steve Campbell's advice, I use these park sprinklers,
Yeah, same thing.
and I'll set them out, and I'll leave them sit in one spot for 3 hours, and move them every 3 hours.
Yeah, whatever it isn't wet, you know, if you got a 30-foot perimeter with your watering, 30 foot over, you know? Just, if you're up for the weekend or whatever, you know, keep moving it all weekend. You know, you might not come back for 2 or 3 weeks, but then start all over. I hate to say it's just water, that's very important, but, you know, and you should start in the spring. When we have, like, we had a lousy winter, those of you who were here all winter, we didn't get any snow. I think I had 8 inches in my house all winter. And I'm used to, you know, 4 foot on a total winter type situation over the last 15 years. So we never recovered from last summer. I think we've had a good monsoon. I've had about 15 inches of water in my house up in High Country Pines. I don't know what everybody else has done, but that's what I get.
About 13 inches.
Yeah, I'm happy with that, real happy with that. But if we go into the winter and we don't get a wet winter, we're right back where we started in March of the year. So in April, as soon as it stops freezing, start putting some water out. Keep it up in those trees. Don't wait until your trees are starving and, oh, I better start watering. It's too late already, because there's so many beetles right now in the trees that eventually they go dormant when it gets cold. But in the spring, like your tree may look perfectly fine, maybe a little light, but it's perfectly fine right now. Well, we're not gonna do anything with that tree. All right, well, come April, we get 2 weeks of warm weather, 85, 90 degrees, April and May, all of a sudden that whole tree dies. And bang, those beetles are on the move. Every 6 weeks they cycle. It used to be we had about 3 cycles a year at the most. We're up to 4 cycles, pushing 5 cycles. You know, and if we don't get a cold winter, they may not go dormant at all. So we have to go after them. We have, you know, I mean, I hope you do, because I'm like I said, I live here, and I love walking in the woods. And you drive down to the valley, and you see 50,000 dead trees, whole streaks of dead brown trees through the forest. You know, I'm hoping. I know the Forest Service normally doesn't do anything about those kind of things. They consider them acts of God and Mother Nature and all that kind of stuff, and they don't attack them. You know, but as homeowners, we can protect our HOAs and our own homes by becoming proactive and making sure our neighbors deal with it. You know, if any of you folks are on your HOA board, encourage your board. You should have CCNRs that say that the board has the responsibility to protect the vested interest of its members. Well, that means the board has a responsibility to take care of this guy's trees that he's not dealing with. Send him a letter. If he doesn't answer, hire somebody to cut it down and put a lien on his property. Sounds very aggressive, but if it's gonna save your trees, what are you gonna do? You know, you wanna lose your trees? I heard a real estate person told me years ago that each big pine on a lot is valued about $5,000. Well, if you lose 18 big pines on your property, and your property was only worth $50,000 to begin with, you got a bare lot. You know, they go for $12,000, and your $50,000 lot is you've lost. So be proactive, do something about it. I'm not trying to drum up business. I have plenty. I'll take any more I can get. I got a daughter in law school, so that's why at almost 70, I'm still out there. Yes.
So if you have existing large pines, are they susceptible?
All,
Yes.
sorry. Yes.
Because
All.
of the shallow roots, or?
Well, no, it's not. I'm sorry. I don't know how to use this thing. Honey, I'm at a meeting. Would you call me later? It's one of my daughters. Anyway, all sizes of your pines are susceptible. Not just the big ones, not just the
So
small.
it's not like they're established and good.
No, it doesn't have anything to do with whether they're established. What it has to do with how much moisture they have in it. That's what makes it susceptible. You know, I go up in the air park, I did a few jobs up in the air park, and I look, and I just finished taking out 19 trees on this lot, had a lot of trees, and I look, and there's about a 90-footer on the next lot. And I thought, and I told him, you're downwind. That's what got your trees. He said, my neighbor's tree? I said, well, yeah, because when that tree died and the bark beetles moved out, they were blown down into your trees, you know, and you got 19-year trees. So talk to your HOA, tell them, get that guy to get, yeah, that one's dead. The likelihood of it actually having bark beetles in it right now is small. I won't say non-existent, but small. But if they got your trees, they're in other trees on that lot too. So they're gonna come back. They're still gonna come after your trees. So just because yours are dead and dry, that doesn't mean it's over for your lot.
So if you're heavily watering your area with your trees and your neighbors are not, am I driving the bark beetle over to your place?
Well, it really doesn't work like that. They're a pest of opportunity. So what you're doing is you're not providing them any food. You're not giving them a place to go. They don't have like a radar that says, let's get that lot over here. They'll come to your trees, but they're not gonna be effective. They can't get in because you've got so much moisture. So they'll either climb down or fly or keep flying. They can fly up to 2 miles in the wind. So, you know, just because you're clean, your neighbor's clean, that doesn't mean that the guy 5 lots down with 9 great big 90-foot ponderosas isn't gonna affect your trees. So, and again, like I said, it's water. It's all about water. And early water. We're too late right now. I mean, they're in the trees, they're in trees right now that still look healthy. We're gonna lose more trees. And the thing is, if you think you have a problem with your tree, if you think, you know, you do what I asked or mentioned, you know, stand back, look, gosh, that looks a little weird, you know, it just doesn't look right, you know? I'm gonna call Rick or Marty or Hal, whoever, come and look at my tree, you know? Yes, sir.
What about blue spruce or fennel roots?
They're not affecting those, but
Yeah, they are. I've cut down
there's other
a lot
species.
of roots.
See, there's a new
I've
species
lost
too.
5 of them.
Yeah, there's, again, it's water, you know, any of them will resist. There are parasites that will kill a blue spruce that watering doesn't affect, but they're not very predominant up here. So, you know, it's not something we work on. If you have a blue spruce that dies, take a cutting off of it and either take it to the Forest Service or call me and I'll take a look at it. And a lot of time we can tell what killed that tree.
What about a normal tree, like a maple tree or a fruit tree?
Fruit trees, there's other parasites, again, you know, they're not getting into those, but there's other parasites, you know, that if you go online, you find enormous amounts of information about that. Yes, ma'am?
Is there a way to test your tree to see how much moisture you have in it? Or to have somebody test them to see?
I always just rely on the Forest Service, because they drill, don't they drill the trees to find out, but you don't
They
wanna,
drill them for age, but not for moisture.
how do they do the moisture?
They do the needles.
Needles?
They have a test where they cut the needles off and they dry them until the moisture comes
Oh, that, okay. I was thinking needle, you know.
Give it a vaccination.
Yeah, the needles, the pine needles are a big information source for biologists and people that do this a lot, because it can tell you the health of your tree. You know, you're watering too much, you're not watering enough. You have spider mites, you have some kind of a boring, I can't think of the name for it right now, but there's a mite that bores into pine needles and kills the trees. So there's a plethora of things that can go wrong with the trees. Our biggest concern now, and major concern, is the bark beetle. You're gonna lose trees to Mother Nature anyways. That happens naturally. Lightning, you know, can kill them. Lightning hits them, makes them weak. And when they respond by pushing sap up to it, that gives off an aroma, and the bark beetles can smell it. So there's all kinds of things out there that work with biology that we as humans don't have those benefits, you know? I mean, I can always smell my wife's cooking, but that doesn't mean, you know, something's available.
Can I
But,
ask you?
yes,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Can I ask you a question about the Hips beetle?
Yeah.
Back when I took that seminar in '01 from Campbell, he said Hips beetle generally does not kill a tree. But there was an article in our local paper a few weeks ago that said Hips beetle will kill a tree.
I'll defer to this young
Currently,
lady.
all the ponderosas are dying from Hips pini, and the pinyon are pinyon Hips.
Yeah, they're two
So
different.
it is an Hips beetle, and they will kill your tree.
Yeah, they will, Steve and I differed a few times, one was with mistletoe, and, we had disagreements about it, because he had a position based more on the forest health in general. And he sometimes didn't focus on the fact that people who live in subdivisions have other issues. Like with mistletoe, he thought that the mistletoe was not a problem. It's out there all the time anyway, not a big deal. Well, yeah, it's in the forest all the time, and no, it's not a big deal when you have 8 million trees that it can infect. But when you're in an HOA and you've got, 40 trees on a lot, and 19 of them have a severe amount of mistletoe, you need to do something. And he didn't believe that. That following year, he corrected his position and
I
agreed.
always cut out the mistletoe.
Yeah, I do too. Yes, sir.
Before we get too far away from the pine needle conversation, is it true that a good natural pine needle ground cover will help hold in moisture for that
Yes.
tree to utilize?
Yes, I'm not a big fan. I mean, I strongly believe in wildfire prevention and in removing ladder fuels, okay? But to me, ladder fuels are the limbs and the small shrubs and stuff that go from the ground up to a certain level of the tree, to take the fire from the ground up into the trees and then into canopies and then into the houses. My position is, we don't have good soil up there. So if you start breaking to bare ground, and we have a good rain, you got a mess. Our rocks grow, you all know that. A little watering and our rocks grow. So to me, a pine needle base, a reasonable one, it's like if you rake it all up one year and then leave it for a couple of years. Then the next year, do a moderate rake up. Keep that, because it does hold moisture. With our winds, I mean, my gosh, we all know, we could get a 4-inch rain today, and tomorrow the dust is blowing because of the wind. So we need to try to keep what we can on the ground. That's my position, and I don't have a lot of people that disagree with that. Some people like the perfectly manicured look, but I don't propose that. I try to get away from that. I do a lot of evaluations for State Farm insurance on properties. Homeowners get letters that say you gotta clear every tree within 90 feet of your house and nothing this, here, and that. And I go in and I evaluate their property. I tell them what they really need to do. And then I send a letter to State Farm that says it meets our standards for our state, our fire department, and our community for fire safe, environment. And I've never had one come back. They threaten to cancel if you don't do something, but I mean, it's kind of ridiculous when State Farm tells you gotta clear every tree within 90 feet of your house. We don't live in Phoenix, don't wanna live in Phoenix. And, we have our trees because we like them. But I agree with their thing of trimming up 8 feet above the roof line, and trimming up trees to 4 to 6 feet. A lot of the guidelines say 6 feet. Depending, to me, I try to work with the customer. You have a home and you don't have a porch that's this high, and I trim your trees up 6 feet. The people that drive by are looking on your porch with you sitting there. Well, to me, 4 foot, that's plenty. Especially if you have just pine needles for ground cover. That pine needles aren't gonna give you a 4-foot fire to get up into your trees. So that's my position. I don't know what the foresters, I defer to them a lot because they have, yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Gene Bowman. I'm retired from Arizona Tropical Forestry and Fire as the district manager up here. I agree with you as far as leaving the pine needles on the ground. Right now, I'm contracting with Navajo County. There's 2 fire-wise assessments to homes. And that's one of the things I'm telling my customers. Leave the needles there. I don't have a big concern about them. Once they hit the ground, they don't blow real readily. It's more the oak leaves that I have a concern about. So,
they're like paper.
They're on paper, they become airborne fire
Yeah,
breaks.
yeah. Any other questions offhand?
Can I just add one
Yes.
quick thing? As far as the fire-wise philosophy, there's, every property is gonna be different. Get an assessment. There's plenty of help out there. There's online tools and everything. My biggest concern is still wait till spring. We were in fire restrictions in April this year, folks.
Yeah,
So if you have the opportunity to do your cleanup now, while the weather's cooperating, I want to think about that, because fire restrictions will be in place every year, we know it. Don't wait till you can't use the tools that you want to use. Get it done, then you can.
when we move into fire restrictions, the fire department, we have a representative here, they have to certify you as being able to operate in your equipment, to be able to function in a safe manner, and they do not do homeowners. Businesses only. I don't know if they're gonna change that policy, but last year, businesses only. You have to bring your equipment in, have it certified, and hopefully that happens again, because we all know John Doe, who lives down the street, doesn't practice safe forestry, I guess you'd say, and rakes up his burning needles and pine and leaves in the middle of, stage 4, and it's like, call on those people, call the fire department, please. Yes.
Fire department does authorize a homeowner, you have to go down and fill out a permit, depends on what stage level you're in.
Yeah, yeah.
On the lower stage levels, you can go down and fill out a permit, they'll come out and inspect the area, inspect your equipment. Then if it passes, then you can use a chainsaw.
And you also have to have your area clean.
You have to have water, we have to carry fire extinguishers. I carry 3 large fire extinguishers. I carry water, I carry hoses, I carry shovels, and all my equipment, I rotate my equipment every 2 years, so I have new equipment.
Part of the requirement of a homeowner, if you get that permit, is you have someone standing by with a hose.
Yeah, see, that's another thing. And the bad part is, most of us have more than one person on our crew. So we have a couple guys working together all the time in spot. Homeowners, most of the time, the wife's in the house and the husband's out in the yard. I'm not saying you guys don't know what you're doing. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just leery of some of our neighbors who don't know what they're doing, and they're out there and they're risking my house, and I don't like that. Don't like it at all. Yes, sir.
Now, I can understand spark arresters
Yeah.
on the equipment. What about electric chainsaws or battery chainsaws?
This lady has a comment.
I'm gonna answer that really quick, if you don't mind. It's not the engine that we're concerned about. And Chief got me up here. It's the blade of the chainsaw that's gonna cause the fire. It's gonna spark on a knot or a rock, or it's gonna get hot, and if you set it down, it's gonna touch something off. That's the concern when it comes to chainsaws. On other equipment, lawnmowers, weed eaters, etc., chimneys, spark arresters, it's a screen that keeps the sparks contained. Sorry to keep interrupting.
No, we need all the information we can get.
Typical stuff.
If the fire
It's gonna be
department,
the same thing. A saw is a saw. It's the heat from the blaze that's causing,
you can get sparks off an electric saw chain on a rock, just as easy.
yeah. It's not the engine.
So you got, it's kind of like tile, then you would want water
Exactly.
to keep the lid.
Yeah.
Okay, that's.
Any other questions offhand? Yes, ma'am?
I've got squirrels that are constantly cutting my tree, just one tree. And is it gonna be easy? This is what they did today.
I understand.
And
I have 40 of them in my.
It's gonna be easier because the sap will really drip. And I'm wondering if the bark beetle's gonna be easier to get in there.
Most of the natural things that happen in Mother Nature, like squirrels, don't raise the likelihood of your tree getting hit. If you have moisture in your tree, it doesn't matter if the squirrel drops 50 rows. You know, the sap is gonna seal where they bit it off and shoot it off. And, your tree's gonna be fine. It's part of how they survive and how the squirrels survive, the trees do that. So that's not an issue, really isn't. So, and like when your tree weeps a lot of sap, I had a woman call me one day and said, Rick, you gotta come over, I gotta cut down my tree. I'm like, gosh, they were fine down there 2 weeks ago, everything went fine. Went over to her house, all these little drops of sap, you know, like rainwater, all over her ground. She's like, it's dying. I said, no, it's not dying, it's fine. So I don't have to cut it down? No. Oh, you're a lifesaver. You know, it's just Mother Nature doing its thing. It's how they cycle different times of the year, different, you know, pollens and moistures and all that stuff.
So you're saying, when I see a pine tree with sap running down the trunk,
That's the tree's response to an injury. Yeah, an injury that it has received that you may not even know. Anytime the fiber in the tree is a bunch of fibers that go up and down. Anytime those fibers are cracked or bent or whatever, like a lot of people you see, they tie their tree up. Oh, it's bent over, so I tied it up. Once that fiber curves, that tree's never gonna go straight. I mean, you can keep it straight, it'll keep going, but you can't change that in the tree. Another thing, trees are very genetic. If you look on a particular lot, you'll see that that lot may have 15 trees that go up 30 feet and then they fork. That's because the mother tree had a fork. And the seeds went on the yard. That tree, mother tree may be gone, may have been logged 50 years ago, 80 years ago. But it grows those trees, just like we have, you know, our kids have blue eyes or whatever. The trees, a lot of their characteristics stay the same. Yes.
What if you have a tree that's bent, I mean, meaning maybe 10%, is that a sign of danger? I mean, if the tree looks healthy, but.
If it looks healthy, no, it's not a sign of danger. One of the things to do, especially when you have all this out, is walk around the base of the tree. You know, walk about 8 to 10 feet away from the tree and look, especially on a windy day, look for cracks in the ground. That's gonna tell you if that tree might fall over. I mean, that's a.
And if it's humped up too.
Yeah.
There's a big old hump on the side it's leaning away from, then that's that root ball trying to come up.
So, you know, generally the leaning doesn't mean a lot. Yes.
One of the things I tell my folks is if it's a leaning tree and you're concerned about it, take a piece of string, attach it to that on the inside of the tree, to the bark, and measure the distance at the base. And do it again maybe 6 months later in that same position and measure that. If that distance at the base is getting further and further out, then that tree's leaning more and more.
Yeah. You can, I mean, if you live here year round, you don't see the lean, you know, you don't see the change in your tree so much. So that's one way to do it, is to keep a record of it if you're concerned about it. If it has a significant lean and it's towards your house, I recommend taking it out. You know, I mean, it's a safety issue for one, you know. With our 70-mile-an-hour winds we're getting anymore, I'd be a little leery. I took 2 out, actually they're on my neighbor's property. They're 90 foot tall and they leaned over my house. And I saw that ground lifting a little bit and I called them and said, "It's your problem." And I said, "No, now that I notified you, it's your problem. Because I'll sue you. How much you charge me taking down?" You know, solve the problem real quick. But, you know, we gotta protect our investments. Most of us are not spring chickens. And, except for Hal here, of course. But, and you, yeah.
I got a question, you know, the squirrel trees, we call them.
Yeah.
Why do the squirrels pick on they'll pick on that same tree until it's stripped clean with no pine needles left on?
Softness, oh.
There has been some research done that some trees taste better than others.
When I started, about 35 years ago, I got an opportunity to work on a logging up on the rim. And I went out with him, and one of the guys was great. He was actually the woods boss. He worked for the Forest Service. He's in heaven now, but great guy. Pima Indian who knew everything. And when we would finish work, he'd say, "Rick, come on, I know you're curious. I want to show you something." And he took me one day to a tree that was leaning over that was kind of yellow on the bottom, you know, and he could smell that. Butterscotch. You would have swore it was full of butterscotch. So these trees, I mean, they can be sweet, you know, I mean, there's nothing that would make them not, other than turpentine, you know, but that's not something they're gonna, the animals are gonna taste. But, yeah, they just, some things taste better.
Yeah, well, they'll work on that tree till they kill it.
Well, it could be, you know, what it's picking up out of the soil, nutrients and stuff that it's getting out of the soil, or out of your septic system, you know, I mean, there's no telling what, Billy Squirrel likes out of that tree, or the whole family likes, because once one starts, you usually have a family, you know, there'll be 4 or 5 of them going to work on that tree. I have a couple at my house that, I mean, every day, it makes me so mad, I'll go out. There'll be 15 pine cones, and I have a dog that loves to eat pine cones. Any of you who walk barefoot in your yard, who step on a piece of pine cone, you know it's not pleasant. So every morning I get up at 5 o'clock, go out, pick up the pine cones and throw them over the fence, and every day there's half a dozen new green twigs like what you have laid in the yard. And I've thought about getting a permit to remove them, but I have grandkids and foster kids that love animals. I have deer and elk at my house almost every day. So dealing with Mother Nature's not an option at my house. Yes?
Is it necessary, or in your practice for removing these pine beetle trees, when you cut them down, do you wrap them before you haul them off?
No.
Because they're already sealed?
Well, they're sealed, plus, once they're on the ground, you know, and especially a dead tree, we get them out right away. You know, we take them to the brush pit, which hopefully
we'll
continues
actually keep it.
to stay open. If not, we'll have to truck them to Sholo or to Payson. They have recycle pits there where we can haul stuff. It'll add a lot of money to the cost of doing it. We're fortunate that the Forest Service has let us have that place for so many years.
There's gonna have to be changes made out there
Yeah,
for us.
we don't have the chipping anymore. We used to come out and chip out there, which was very beneficial to us because 3 or 4 times every summer we had an empty pit. We had a nail haven for our tires, but they got rid of the brush and we could refill. But now we're probably at least 85% full. And in the old days, we used to burn it every winter. And when they did, then it was closed for months, you know, and then no work got done, or people dumped in the woods, which is another thing that happens when, you know, it's like when the compactor's closed on Wednesday. You can find trash all over the place. But, you know, hopefully we can, if not use that, at least maybe come up with an alternative. You know, we can sometimes haul into Forest Lakes. They don't like us to do that, but their guys haul into our place all the time, so hopefully we can maybe work out something. They can't ship either.
They're getting really full.
They're getting full too, so something has to be done. We're not sure what the Forest Service is gonna agree to with our fire department, and sanitation department. There is a piece of land out in Clay Springs where a gentleman will allow us to pay to dump, but it's still a 20-mile ride each way, you know, and my vehicle pulling a 10,000-pound trailer loaded with trees gets about 8 miles per gallon, so, you know, you figure 5 gallons costs me $10 just to go there, not counting the hour-and-a-half time that it takes, so it's gonna add to the cost to the homeowners. Right now, we have a no-fee dump, which is great. I don't have a problem paying a fee in there. That's what it means, you know, I don't think any of us do.
One piece they ship.
Well, the company that did it, there was too much debris in there. It's supposed to be just wood product and no man-processed wood, you know, like fence posts and things like that. And you go out there and you see people are dumping all kinds of stuff. out there. They hide it underneath their tree branches. They get out there, they dump concrete, they dump all kinds of stuff. But when you have a $350,000 drum chipper running at 8,000 RPM and a piece of concrete with rebar gets dumped into it, it tends to do some damage, and they're tired of having that happen. So they stopped doing that. They're only chipping now on virgin forest. They're working in the chipping areas that the guys are working on, where you see they're thinning in the woods and that kind of stuff. They're doing those because there's no nails and that kind of stuff.
And the powerhouse out here will not take it from the brush pits anymore. It
That was
doesn't
their-
burn worth a darn.
But, any other questions? If not, I'd like the fire department representative to speak about the hopes or potential for a new program.
As we talked last week, we had the representatives from the Western Bark Beetle Initiative, folks come in and do a community-wide survey of our bark beetle problem, and educated the fire department because we were under a different impression of what the Bark Beetle Initiative intent was. Our initial suspicion or expectation was that they were gonna help you bring down some of these already dead trees. That was very wrong. What their plan is, and what Rick alluded to, was the two things that absolutely can make a difference is moisture and thinning. And their bark beetle initiative is directly related to a fire-wise intent of thinning your property to give the trees that you do have remaining the strongest chance of survival against our attack, and it's a community-wide attack. The more clumped your trees are, they're starving for water because each one of them is picking up every bit of moisture that they can. And the one that happens to be not in the best position gets distressed, and that's when the bark beetles kind of make their way over to it. They send their signals out, and next thing you know, you've got a big colonization, and the only choice of that is to bring that down. At the same time, the other ones are being stressed, and they just grow and grow, and they move, and as Rick again alluded to, they can travel for miles. So the initiative, though we're in the process of gaining that, it's probably not likely going to be for another year before we get word on what type of match and how much we'll have for the community. Our advice right now is work with the contractors that we have in the community that are respected and qualified and insured to help bring your area of your land and your property down to a fire-wise or what we would call an 80 basal area where the trees are healthier surrounding that, and then let's get that solution, and then pray for a very, very cold, wet, hard winter. Questions for me?
I got a question. During the no-burn season, well, every month we get a police report on what the police did. Why don't we have the name of the person and his fine who started a fire during the no-burn season? I'd like to see it because my house is worth more than that $150 fine they get for a no-burn.
That's a great question. We had a lot of those folks with the same sentiment. That's a Navajo County Sheriff and a county prosecutor issue, and I don't have any of the information. We've asked to find out even what happened with the gentleman that was on the 377, or the cause of the 377 fire, all about that same time where we were in stage 3 restrictions, and literally our forest was at a point of gasoline.
Yeah, I found somebody down at one of the lakes I was fishing, and some guys had a campfire. I stopped a sheriff's deputy on the highway, and you know what he told me? I've got to notify the forest department. He wouldn't get down there and tell them to put the fire out. You don't think I was happy about that? I wasn't.
I'll bet not. And we'd have to, I know there's, at the time that we were in stage 3 and the forest was closed on the south side of the 260, they brought in extra law enforcement officers to help with that. But I can tell you they were busy almost 18 hours a day, late at night, while people were cutting barricades. They were getting into the forest areas. We had planes flying. We had everything that we could possibly do to keep our community safe from the danger that was there in the south side of the 260.
And you did an excellent job.
The person at lead is Katrina Jenkins, our emergency manager. She was basically the spearhead, and there is no other feistier person in our Navajo County that made sure we did what we were supposed to do and everybody else was on the same page. So my compliments
I
to
will
her.
just give you that, it's a community effort, we are a partnership up here across the board, it's not just me, but thank you, Lee, and I love you, but, and we couldn't do it without you guys as our partners. We need you to help us, so keep stopping the sheriff's deputies, talk to us, call us, we will, as much as possible, get out there and take care of those issues when they're spotted, call dispatch or whatever you have to do. We wanna know, they are citing, our sheriff has a zero tolerance policy on those, on any of those restrictions, so those deputies have been told, top down, to make sure that they get cited. They do work with Forest Service law enforcement, state law enforcement, you name it, they all get the same message.
It's very effective. I can tell you from our standpoint, we dodged probably one of the worst bullets that could have been since Rodeo Shed Sky. And so the credit again is back to all of you that took it upon yourselves to report those little things and be the eyes and ears of all of us that we're only a far few in this mix, running around with our head cut off. And I did 120 plus inspections on chainsaws and sites so that there was one view, one opinion, one voice on how we were gonna keep our community safe. So thank you for allowing us to give you that opportunity and for you to do what you were supposed to do to keep us from having to come out. We appreciated that from the fire department. Thank you.
I have a question, what was the reasoning in just closing the south side and leaving the north side open?
I can give it to Katrina. The main reason is the taller pines on the south side and our southwest wind directions to the northeast made it a direct flow straight up into us. So the whole intent was to provide, we can't protect and to put firefighters and all the resources that we pre-positioned. And I'm sure everybody saw all of the buggies, all of the planes, all the helicopters, all the resources that we had pre-positioned here for those specific circumstances. We're knowing that people were still gonna end up in there, and that was an area that we could not protect without the loss of life. And so that was why that area, that south area was just closed. Now the north area, not as unimportant, but where does it lead to after that? We saw that in the 377 fire. It, other than Despain Ranch, it burned into juniper and then eventually into grass and made its way out. We had no structures lost, we had no firefighters injured, we had no loss of life. So those are the things. Wonderful. No other questions? Perfect. Oh.
You know what, if you keep finding these people that cut these wires and go across and find them big, it's gonna hit home.
What's the fine on that?
Your prior restrictions on the forest is a mandatory appearance and final setup.
And that's Judge Peterson and Snowflake, correct?
Flagstaff.
Oh,
Yeah,
Flagstaff.
just so you know, it is a federal court appearance if they're on Forest Service. So you don't have a choice. And so that's an added expense. You have to go to federal court, which is a lot different than a local magistrate or justice court. So, and we do side on the county side, if they're on a county island or something like that, they're gonna go see a county judge, and our county judges are enforcing those citations as long as they have been done properly. And we work with the sheriff's office and all law enforcement across both counties, Apache and Navajo, to make sure everybody's on board and knowing. So, we do have turnover, we do have new deputies, so we try to keep them up to date, but, you know.
My favorite phone call for the entire closure of the forest was a young gal that got the fire department's number and made the call. And she said, gosh, we are stuck on a side of a locked gate. We just camped overnight in Black Canyon. And we need somebody to come help us get out. I got the perfect person.
During, when we were in fire restriction, why are businesses selling firewood?
That's
And
it.
people come up here, you know, and they go in and they get gas or whatever they do, and there's that firewood for sale. And
They
you
were not allowed
can't
to
have
sell
a
it.
fire.
They were not allowed to sell
Well,
that.
then they should, why can't they put it in the back?
I'm gonna answer
Gonna
that one
give-
really
yeah.
quick. They are allowed to sell it.
Oh.
We did have a lot of cooperation from our local partners in the stores and businesses that when they could, they did remove it from the shelves. When they couldn't because of their corporate, okay? So I would highly recommend when you see a store that is selling it, write to their corporate office.
Okay.
It's a corporate decision. It's not a local decision. They have no choice. They're trying to make a living just like everybody else at this level. But if you start writing those corporate level officers and explaining to them, you are doing our community a disservice, you are jeopardizing my home, please stop this, they will eventually listen when they get enough letters, folks.
Okay.
But
And I know the
that's
poor
one of
gal
the
at the Dollar
partnerships that
General
we're
got an
talking about.
earful many times. Many
And
times.
I can tell you that we did try to put signage up, we had volunteers going out, putting up signage, explaining restrictions, while it's the same thing with fireworks. You can buy fireworks,
Yeah.
can't light them when we're in restrictions, but you can buy them. That's the fine distinction, and we're working with that, that's a state legislature kind of thing that it's statute. We can't prohibit somebody from making a living. That's their living, they're selling their goods, but we can't prohibit the use of those goods. It's a fine line, but it's what we got.
Let's hope we never get in that position again.